Reddit Martian back with another tip-top video for you. r/AskReddit. Serious, people who have been the target of murderers assassins. How did you survive? And why did they target you? They missed. That's about the only reason. It was a random act of violence. A man ran up behind me, put a gun to my head and shot. He flinched or I did and he missed by an inch. Blew out my left eardrum and burned my hair behind my ear. He ran off immediately after. Cops said it was probably a gang initiation thing. I have deafening tinnitus now and horrible anxiety in public. I'm not sure if it counts, but a few years ago in high school, there was this guy that used to trouble everyone by taking naked photos of them when they were changing after pay class. I happened to be one of his targets, so I reported him to my teacher and eventually he got suspended for about a month and had to attend counseling sessions. One day I was at the bus stop waiting for my bus when suddenly I felt a push on my back and I fell onto the road. Luckily for me, the bus driver stopped the bus in time and I survived. However, I fell directly on my arm and it was fractured. Last I heard, he went to the juvenile center and no one ever had to see this devil again. I've posted about this before. I was in a really bad, abusive relationship. He had many mental issues along with diabetes. This doesn't excuse any of it, as he was aware of what his body was doing and he never got help. But it's important to know it didn't exactly come out of the blue. One night, he seemed bored and started trying to stick his feet in my face. I pushed them away, disgusted, and he exploded. It was a whole lot of action. He started by trying to choke me. I freed myself by grabbing a cat brush, the kind with the sharp metal points, and pushing it into his chest. He let me go but pushed me to the ground and lifted his airsoft rifle and drove it to my head like he was trying to cave in my skull. At the last moment he hesitated. I ran out of the apartment and called the cops. It didn't occur to me until later when I was with a public defender documenting my injuries that he had really wanted to kill me. I had bruising so deep they were black in color. In places I don't even remember him hitting me. He really would have, if something in him hadn't hesitated. My ex-boyfriend hired some guy from Chicago to murder me after I broke up with him for selling drugs to my younger sister. Fortunately, my ex and I both had a mutual friend who found out and had more pull with the attempted assassin. Both were Polish immigrants. Ex calls me up later and demands $2,000 from me because he didn't get what he paid for, as the hired gun wouldn't give a refund. No way to prove it, but had all the lug nuts on my truck's front passenger rim loosened, which caused death. Wobble so bad I almost crashed in the fast lane of the freeway. Luckily the rim stayed on. I had ghosted this one guy and part of me suspects he came and loosened my lug nuts in retaliation. My boss discovered it being the nice guy he was. About a year ago, I was walking my dog at night when I saw this really beat up old Honda Civic pull up on the other side of the road. I noticed that two similar cars positioned themselves on the roads perpendicular to me, both behind and in front of me. I was boxed in. This kid no older than 19 gets out with two other people, and the kid reaches for a gun in his waistband and makes a beeline towards me. A random car passes and they all scatter. Once the car is gone, they come back and try to do the same thing. But another random car passes again, and they take off. I made the quarter-mile run home in about 2 minutes. My guess is I was the victim of a gang initiation, and they ran away when witnesses saw. Edit. I've been getting a lot of comments about how I'm a slow runner. My dog is old and I have knee and back injuries from years ago. Sorry, I'm a turtle, I guess, lol. I was almost murdered. If it wasn't for my manager I would have been. My sister set me up on a date with her friend. I ended up having to work the weekend, so I cancelled. The date went out with someone else and afterwards invited him to her apartment. Right before they went inside, someone killed them both with a gun. It turned out to be a jealous neighbor of the girl who she was also messing with. That could have been me if I went on the date and she decided to let me in for tea. It wasn't a murderer, but I was on a hit list of a student at my school a few months back. I was put there because I was a good friend of everyone else on the list. The police came to my house and asked me questions about them. Overall it's ducked up. Edit clear things up. The reason he had a hit list in the first place was not because of bullying, it was his parents and he needing to take out his anger on others. Also the people on the list were his other friends. He had several mental illnesses that could have made it worse. This girl who I thought knew me messaged me on Instagram. Even though we never met, we continued talking. Turns out she had a boyfriend who went to my school and he threatened to kill me if I didn't block her. He actually brought a knife to school that day too. Nothing happened to me. While the kid with a knife was expelled after a teacher saw the knife in his backpack. This brought back a memory. My girlfriend in high school had a guy that had a crush on her. She told me he made her feel uncomfortable when he was around. So I very politely sent him a message asking him to stop and explained everything. I call off school cause I'm a slacker. Next thing I know, I wake up to my mom saying the cops are here, saying I'm at the school in a trench coat with a knife going to stab this kid. Nothing happened, but really, WTF. I still don't understand his plan on that one. Not sure if this counts as I wasn't the intended target, but my dad ran a chapter of a fairly notorious biker gang, notorious enough to get their own episode of Gangland. Once my dad left, a guy who never really liked him all that much took his place and insisted that since he was no longer in the gang, he needed to get rid of his tattoo. My dad told him to go pound sand. Surprisingly, that didn't go over particularly well, and he ordered his SUV bombed. We lived in an apartment complex at the time and they blew up the wrong SUV. Thankfully no one was inside either. As far as I know, that was the only attempt on his life, at least as long as I've been alive. My father was involved, as competition to them, with the Russian Mafia in Finland in the 90s. He sold weapons, did some protection services, loan sharking and other stuff. He ended up killing someone connected pretty high up to Russia and got a hit on his head. Being his only son, I was in danger as they couldn't get to my father. Me and my mother moved across the country under a different name. They ended up kidnapping my father's then wife, took her to woods and shot her. This was a pretty big deal since the Russian Mafia had a strict rule not to usually do hits on women or children. I was a photojournalist in an unnamed Central American country doing humanitarian coverage for a college. Suddenly there were riots against the government and officials started shooting people with cameras. My group was chased, so I had to change my appearance. That is, clothes, hat, satchel, and ditch my camera to an in-country contact and acted like a normal student to smuggle my SD cards in little slots I cut in my shoes until I got to the US, where I took them out and just had them in my pocket so to not arouse suspicion by TSA. 10/10 would do again. When I was young, my mother was an EMT. We didn't have a lot of money, so we moved around a lot, but I was a happy enough child. A few years ago, I was visiting home and saw the autobiography of a local murderer on my mom's table. She's not one to read those types of books, so I asked about it. Turns out that, when I was younger, she and her partner responded to a call and found a body behind a dumpster. She had to testify in court, eventually putting that man behind bars. Shortly after, she began receiving threats, mainly directed at me. Every time she got a threat, we moved, making her feel safe until the next letter mysteriously showed up. As far as I know, nothing ever came of the threats, but I also didn't even know they were happening, so I may have just been young and naive. While it seemed strange at the time, I actually didn't find out about the circumstances until 20 years later. I worked at the White House during the Clinton administration in an IT capacity, and was traveling on a trip to the Philippines and the APEC conference in Jakarta, Indonesia. We had flown into Manila late, and hopped on the bus to the hotel with the staff motorcade. Everyone was pretty awake, and we were all busing on the ride to the hotel. About 45 minutes into the ride, I look out the window of the bus and we are on a narrow road lined by corrugated tin shacks. It really seemed strange at the time, since why would the road from the airport to the nice hotels in Manila have to go through this neighborhood? We eventually arrived at the hotel, and it was quickly forgotten 20 years later. I am watching a series on the History Channel about the United States Secret Service. This one episode was about how the Secret Service coordinates with intelligence agencies, and talked about on a Clinton trip to Manila where they overheard Al Qaeda was talking about a wedding cake under the bridge. Wedding cake was a known code word for bomb. Clinton was diverted to the alternate route, and undoubtedly got to the hotel a lot quicker than we did. It turns out there was indeed a bomb under the bridge on the route to the hotel. I was obviously not the target, but it was crazy, and many of us could have been collateral damage. Do you know what you are? That's right, you're a champ. Thanks for watching. Like and share if you enjoyed. Don't forget the bell. Subscribe for more videos. See you soon, Martians.